Welcome back to Today Assets Report, the channel where we break down what's actually happening in the financial world, cut through the noise, and give you the real picture. I'm really glad you're here today because what we're covering right now is something most people have completely missed. This is not a rumor. This is not speculation. This is one of the biggest structural developments in XRP's entire history, and the majority of investors scrolling through their feeds right now have no idea it even happened. We're talking about an institution so powerful, so deeply embedded inside the American financial system that every single stock trade you have ever made in your life passed through it. Every single one. You clicked buy, the trade settled, and the place that made that happen, you've probably never heard its name. That institution is the DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. And here's the headline that changes everything. Ripple Prime is now listed inside the DTCC's NSCC clearing directory, right next to Goldman Sachs, right next to JP Morgan. Once you understand what that actually means, the entire XRP story looks completely different. Voice, the DTCC and the Hidden Road acquisition. Let's start with the foundation. The DTCC is not a bank, not an exchange, not a brokerage. It is the post-trade clearing backbone of the entire American securities market. Every stock trade, every ETF, every mutual fund, every bond, before any of it is finalized, it flows through the DTCC. We're talking $4.7 quadrillion in annual processing volume. That number is almost impossible to relate to on a human scale, but what it tells you is this. When something is embedded inside DTCC infrastructure, it is not being tested. It is already running at full institutional scale. And Ripple got inside that infrastructure in the most strategically elegant way possible. In March 2026, Ripple acquired a company called Hidden Road, a prime brokerage already clearing over $3 trillion annually for more than 300 institutional clients, hedge funds, asset managers, major banks. Hidden Road was already operating inside DTCC's framework. Ripple didn't need to ask for access. They bought an entity that already had it, rebranded it as Ripple Prime, integrated the XRP ledger as the settlement layer, and walked straight into the most important clearing directory in American finance. That is not adoption. That is infrastructure. The DTCC does not run pilots. When you are in that directory, next to Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan, you are already part of the system. Voice DTCC tokenization and Evernorth native lending. Now here's where the forward picture gets genuinely extraordinary. The DTCC has officially confirmed they are launching a tokenization service in the second half of 2026, recording actual American securities on distributed ledger technology while keeping existing systems intact. That is a committed institutional deployment timeline, not a roadmap item. And when that tokenization service goes live, the clearing infrastructure it operates through already has the XRP ledger embedded inside it through Ripple Prime. The path is already built. But there's another development that most analysis is completely missing, and it may be just as important. A company called Evernorth is building native lending directly on the XRP ledger, and they have already committed 400 million XRP to a native lending pool. Native means the lending happens on the actual ledger itself, not through a third-party platform sitting on top of it. When institutions participate in these pools, they lock XRP in place as productive capital generating yield, the same way bonds and treasuries function in traditional finance. That XRP does not flow through transactions. It does not sit on an exchange. It is removed from circulating supply permanently as positional institutional demand. And that changes the supply picture for XRP in a way that has never existed before in this asset's history. Voice, the supply shock and what comes next. Let me give you the supply numbers with full precision, because lined up together they tell one of the clearest market structure stories in XRP's documented history. Since October, 4.09 billion XRP has been pulled off centralized exchanges. In February alone, 7 billion XRP left exchanges in a single month. The XRP order book right now sits at its thinnest level since 2021. And simultaneously, Evernorth is locking 400 million XRP in a native lending pool. Ripple Prime is serving 300-plus institutional clients on XRP ledger infrastructure, and the DTCC tokenization service is confirmed to launch in the second half of 2026. Supply going down, institutional demand being constructed. This is what a supply shock in slow motion looks like. And here is the most important question. If all of this is already in motion, why hasn't the price moved yet? The honest answer is actually more bullish than the question. The infrastructure is still loading. The tokenization service isn't live yet. The native lending pools are still being built. The full weight of institutional demand hasn't arrived. What we're watching right now is the window between when the infrastructure was built and when the volume flowing through it reaches full capacity, and the supply shock has been accumulating the entire time. When institutional demand meets a structurally thinned order book through a system that is already built and already operational, the price will reflect everything that has been building invisibly. The most important room in American finance already has XRP in it, not as a pilot, as infrastructure. And the second half of 2026 is when the world finds out what that actually means. Stay sharp, stay informed. This is Today Assets Report, and we'll see you in the next one.